What was that? He could see across the room. He had to take a closer look.
Hello and welcome to our first look at Bright Paw. This is the definitive edition on Steam. Thanks to Rogue Games, the publisher, for sending us a copy. It is a adventure narration puzzle developed by Radical Forge. I believe it came out on 21st of August 2020 originally. A gunshot rattles the house and now your owners are dead, murdered. But why? And where's the culprit? The answers won't be easy to come by, especially because you're the family cat. Guided by the narrator, play as feline hero Theo as he embarks on an epic adventure to solve the crime and exact revenge on the culprits. The quest will take you through more than 70 bespoke levels, each an escape room puzzle with unique hazards, full of twists and turns. Right. Definitive Edition features an additional 101 levels of endgame content, a mysterious, complex and witty storyline complemented by professional voice acting, expanded accessibility options, new rewards in the form of player skins and card styles. Simple turn-based controls allow you to plan your routes and outwit enemies, with more than 180 hidden collectibles. Right. We've just started, so you choose a card for a movement or an action. So let's go with this one.
God! Theo couldn't believe what he was seeing. His family, motionless on the floor. But that was it. No gun? Nothing at all. Was someone else here? As he turned away, Theo could only think about one thing. Someone was surely responsible for this, and he had to know who. Cautiously examining the hallway, Theo saw no signs of the killer. Instead, he found a path of destruction carved through strange machines before him. The deeper into the room Theo moved, the more he realized that something was amiss. That bright red light hadn't always been there, had it?
Oh, we can click on them. I don't know. For some reason I thought we had to walk up to them before we could click on them. Yeah, for some reason I thought we had to actually get to the square next to the object in order to actually click on them.
Although he could not shake the image of his departed owners, Theo suddenly found himself somewhere very different indeed. However, before he could appreciate his new surroundings, he found his attention drawn to the glowing hot wall of energy in front of him. Faced with something so clearly hazardous, he thought it might be wise to take a moment to think before diving headlong into oblivion. Oh, what a pleasant surprise! After his daring maneuver, Theo found that he was still alive. Unfortunately, clearly Theo didn't have time to mess about with a killer on the loose. Perhaps that vent offered a way forwards. Still somewhat tense from his previous trial, Theo was immensely relieved to find no deadly lasers when he emerged from the vent. On the other hand, he was instead faced with a functional, frantic, and quite soggy security robot.
Not a robot that washes the floor.
As he skirted by the distracted machine, Theo found himself eyeing the hole-riddled aquarium. Either someone was stalking the halls shooting at water features, or the security needed to work on their aim. Though the appeal of fresh fish was enticing, it was offset by the risk of an unexpected bath. Rather than contemplate such a terrible fate any further, Theo decided to make a quick exit. Advancing cautiously, Theo was encouraged by the sight of another aquarium, this time with the water safely inside, not threatening to unpleasantly dampen his fur. There was no time to fish, however, as security appeared to be taking its job a touch more seriously. Although Theo could be easily distracted, he knew when it was time to focus. Tearing his attention away from the unattainable, Theo delicately stepped between the broken remains of some very expensive-looking showpieces. Despite his lack of any understanding of fine art, he was disgusted by the wanton destruction before him. Having successfully weaved past the searching eyes of the guard, he was overjoyed to see that he could just follow the killer through a door, instead of crawling through the ventilation like a rodent. Theo cast his eyes about the grandiose room, the impressive decor marred by the smoking wreckage of robotic guards. Clearly, someone with no respect for interior design had been this way. However, hanging over the remains of a reception desk, Theo spotted something that took his interest. Bright Paw Industries.
Right.
Although this place was impressive, Theo knew he had precious little time to admire it.
So far, so good.
At first glance, it appeared that Theo had stumbled into a storage room for broken glass. Except there were other items in the glittering fragments. Grenades? Missiles? An umbrella?
Welcome. Did you know there are 279 different ways in which Bright Paw Industries is benefiting you?
Ruh-roh. Okay, now we know where he's going. Go back again. Yeah.
Welcome, valued patrons.
No. That's not the way I clicked, is it?
Theo padded behind the guard, pondering his discoveries. A hidden underground facility, robotic security, and now rooms filled with odd weapons. What on earth was this place? Looking back, Theo considered that it was perhaps unwise to leave such destructive toys lying around. On the other hand, there was no way someone would leave live explosives on display. Probably best to ignore it and hurry on. Theo contemplated the ruins of the once magnificent boardroom, which had been reduced to little more than burnt mahogany by some kind of explosion. Apparently, the killer had needed to clear the room in a hurry. But why? Oh, perhaps those lasers were a motivator. With the wall of death slowly advancing, Theo scrambled for a plan to slip by. There, across the room, a shattered glass wall offering a glimpse of escape. Deftly avoiding... Deftly avoiding glass with his paws, Theo found his eyes drawn to a large portrait on the wall. Was that Nathaniel? As he stood, he wondered, how much of all this was his master responsible for?
They're getting to torn. Why won't he turn around? Seriously? Why? Doesn't make sense that you just leave him facing that way. Come on, just step in. Not giving us new cards, so like, what are we supposed to do? Ah, there we go. You kind of make the assumption that you're supposed to be facing the door, but yeah, apparently that's not a thing.
Someone had clearly been rifling through the deliveries recently, though they didn't seem to have found what they were looking for. Theo had apparently added his name to the waiting list.
Right, where are we going? This way, I suppose.
Obviously, the killer had been looting the facility, and it was unlikely that they planned to use volatile weaponry to spread peace and joy. Being a conscientious cat, Theo knew it fell to him to put a stop to the killer's nefarious activities.
But of course, because that's what a cat does.
Finding himself inside a warehouse, the towering stacks of crates gave Theo some measure of hope. Perhaps the killer would try to search the top of an unstable pile and fall to their doom. Lost in daydreams of the killer being buried alive, Theo stepped blindly forwards onto a conveyor belt, promptly shuffling him. Perhaps he should pay more attention to where he's going. Perhaps it was unlikely that the killer would be ended by fallen cargo. But the belts leading into the dark and deadly machinery seemed to promise an untimely demise. Spotting a bundle under some nearby crates, it appeared Theo's wishes had been heard. However, he tempered his excitement until he could get a closer look.
not sure if we're supposed to be actually searching the rooms or just passing through.
Theo tempered his excitement. He didn't lose it. Stepping over a broken belt with great care, he was disappointed to discover not a body, but simply several empty crates bearing the label High Explosive. The empty crates led Theo to conclude three things. The killer had found what they were looking for, they were definitely up to something, and Theo's work was not yet done. He moved on with the hope that the killer's loot would be enough to slow them down.
How do I get... do we get off of this? Oh, I think we got it.
Theo pondered the erratic crusade of the robots as they fired at non-existent threats. Perhaps the killer had just passed through? The belt, unable to tell the difference between a cat and a crate, and lacking the desire to learn, moved him once again as...
Ow. That happened.
The belt, unable to tell the difference between a cat and a
that's not
crate...
the one I...
No!
It changed as I was clicking, didn't it?
The belt, unable to tell the difference between a cat and a crate, and lacking the desire to learn, moved him once
there
again
we go.
as it would any other box. As he headed for the door, Theo couldn't shake the feeling that the strange blue algae was creeping steadily across the wall behind him. Oh well, it was probably harmless. Whoever Theo was following had certainly spooked these poor robots who were all consumed by blind panic.
Right, so we're heading that way. Nope. Okay, let's try this one.
As he carefully padded forwards, avoiding lasers, Theo noticed the most curious drawing etched into the wall. But why would a killer stop to doodle?
Exactly. Why indeed?
Theo couldn't stop thinking about the bizarre graffiti he kept seeing. It was unlikely the killer was taking the time for artistic creativity. Was someone else in the facility? As he stepped into the room, Theo found his racing mind halted by yet another drawing of a slightly more significant scale.
Right, so we
Theo tried his best to examine the etching, but found it devoid of artistic value. Perhaps, he thought as he carried on, the murderer was simply an awful artist. Whatever it was, the mural failed to hold Theo's interest long enough for any meaning to be gleaned.
Yeah.
As he began to move away, Theo couldn't help but wonder who would put so much effort into these acts of vandalism. Was it maybe some kind of poorly drawn calling card?
And we're through.
According to the booming sounds of heavy industry and the massive shipping containers, Theo had found himself in some kind of loading station. Theo's eye was caught by something colourful and clearly out of place hanging from a rail across the room. A discarded tie. Was this some kind of taunt? It was becoming clear to Theo that the large boxes wouldn't just wait for him to cross, so he quickened his pace towards the infuriating clue. Clearly the killer had left this tie to send a message, but in doing so they had left a trail for Theo to follow. Perhaps he'd get the better of them yet. Though he was intrigued by the surprisingly expressive train waiting before him, on the other side of the tracks, a curious hole in the wall drew his eye. Perhaps the killer had made their own exit.
Oh yeah, there's now.
Stepping onto the train, Theo glanced towards his goal and noticed a strangely carefree-looking robot bumbling around near a control panel. Hopefully this one wasn't a threat.
You had to go and say it.
The train began to quake, and Theo couldn't react fast enough to leap off. He had better find something to hold on to. Theo was quite unprepared for the sudden velocity and found his current predicament extremely upsetting. Luckily, he just needed to hold on until the train looped back to the station. As the hatch broke free and rocketed past him, Theo pressed himself against the train and vowed to dedicate the rest of the ride to keeping his eyes open for low-flying objects of feline destruction. It was all he could do to just keep his paws on the ground! Tried not to let the burning robot distract him from his efforts to survive!
Uh-oh. Okay. There we go. Bed.
In the distance, Theo could just about spot the station! Approaching at a rapid pace! He just hoped to hold on a little longer!
And we're back.
Theo staggered off the train quickly, driven by his newfound appreciation for solid ground and the terrible fear that it might suddenly set off again.
Please ensure all luggage and belongings are with you as you leave the train.
Just ahead of him, he could see that bloody robot that had sent the train off in the first place. As he followed the irritating machine through the jagged opening in the wall, Theo hoped that he wouldn't ever have to lay eyes on it again.
Well, that concludes our first look. Thanks for watching and bye for now.
Theo